Hello to you. It's the 13th of October. You can see I'm standing here on the Brisbane River, and actually just behind me you can see the high rises there. That's the Brisbane CBD. Now, I've spent a fascinating 4 days. I've spent them with some of the top South African investors, and basically what we've been doing is traveling around. We spent 2 very intensive days in Sydney and again 2 very intensive days here in Brisbane. We've been talking to all the different property people, we've been talking to the banks, we've been talking to lawyers, we've been talking to people outside the property market. I even like to spend a lot of time interviewing the taxi drivers. I always believe taxi drivers know what's going on. They've got a feel for the people in terms of where the market is. And what we've basically done is that we've come here, we've looked at opportunities, we've come to analyze risks, so that we can make educated and informed decisions. You know, there's 3 reasons why people from South Africa invest in the Australian market. The first one is wealth preservation, the second one is a plan B, and the third one is peace of mind. And you know, there's a lot of jitters at the moment, both locally from a political and economic standpoint. There's jitters internationally in terms of what's happening with Europe and America. And I really came here to try and understand it and say, well, listen, you know, how does that affect me? How does that affect my investments? How does that affect my clients? And primarily with those 3 characteristics, so wealth preservation, a plan B, and peace of mind. So, you know, everyone talks in property. For me, it's about location, location, location. Well, I actually think that that's a load of crap, to be fair. I believe that it's all about research, 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 because, you know, property is all about having the right information. And if you've got the right information, you can make educated and informed decisions. So this is one of the many magazines that I've bought here, and I just wanted to share with you some of the facts and figures which I thought were absolutely amazing, you know, that I picked up. In 2003, the Australian Bureau of Standards estimated that there would be 26.4 million people in Australia by 2050. They've now changed that in the international report, and that they now say there's going to be 35.9 million people living in this country by 2050. That's an increase of 36% on where they were literally 8 years ago. The next thing that's pretty interesting is that they are decreasing the number of people that are immigrating to the country. The average over the last 10 years has been 249,000 people. They're now looking to make it about 180,000. Now, the interesting thing is there's only 2 ways to get into this country. It's skills and money. So if you've got skills or money, then you can move here. So this population, this economy just gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and they don't certainly have the problems that places like London and England have, where, you know, you're not necessarily getting the best people from around the world coming in, moving in and wanting to live on their dole in terms of where they are. Now, there's a whole lot of graphs and statistics here. I'll put them all together on my market report, which you can get on the IPS website, ipsinvest.com. But just some things that I think are really, really interesting is that they're going to have to be able to bring migrants in. The Australian population is getting older. The baby boomers are beyond 50 now, and they are not necessarily going to be working. There's a whole lot of stats here in terms of the amount of people with regards to tax and the tax base and how many elderly people are going to be supported by tax earners. And the only way to do it is to bring in skilled migrant labor to keep that population low in terms of where they are. Something else that I think is fascinating is that 1 in 4 Australians was actually born overseas, and 1 in 2 have a parent that was born overseas. So it's a very, very multicultural society. But what does that all mean to property? Well, interestingly enough, if you take into account the number of people that they foresee, both from natural births and from immigration in terms of where they are, it basically translates into they're going to need 3 million homes over the next 15 years. So just to look here in terms of where they're looking at, BIS Shrapnel transports that they need 2.3 million new households with an average of 2.5 people. But then when you take into account that households are also getting smaller, they reckon that it'll be up to 3 million homes that they're going to require within the next 15 years. So the biggest thing that I've learned in property is it's about supply and demand. If there's more demand than supply, then you have a stable and efficient market. In America, in Dubai, in Ireland, in Spain, there was a massive oversupply. The market corrected, the properties dropped, and they haven't recovered because the demand was out of kilter with the supply. But in places like London, where the demand far outstretched the supply, the market did drop. It dropped about 15%, but it quickly recovered in less than 18 months to over the full value in terms of where it was. So I think these supply, market demand and supply numbers are very, very important in terms of where we are looking and what is actually happening. BIS Shrapnel concludes that around 3 million homes will need to be added to the current dwelling stock in the 15 years. That will mean a 33% increase in the number of homes that have been built on average over the past 15 years. BIS doesn't think that we'll get there and forecasts a 28% annual rise in housing supply, which results in the cumulative dwelling stock shortage of 240,000 homes by 2026. There's a whole lot of charts that I'll send through with regards to it. But the last thing that I think is really, really important is also the generation. You know, the Generation X is my age. You know, they tend to want to live in the suburbs. The Generation Ys, they're not interested. They want to live next to the amenities. They want to live next to the transport. They want to live next to the city. They're no longer interested in living in houses out in the burbs, having to travel and commute. It's too difficult to travel and commute. They want to be close to the action. They want to be close to the transport nodes, close to the accessories. There's a big change happening here in Australia. It's no longer about living in the suburbs. It's about being closer to the city, close to access points. And that's very, very interesting. So we found some fantastic opportunities. We've been looking at shopping centres in Sydney. We've been looking at a student housing development right next to the University of Sydney in Kensington for $44 million. We've been looking at developments. We found some fantastic stuff in Bondi and also in Bondi Junction. So we really got some stuff key right close to the centre. I spent the whole day here in Brisbane yesterday and again another day today looking at developments, going around, understanding the market, looking at areas that are close to the CBD, looking at areas that are close to the transport nodes. We've got something in 8 Mile Plain that literally is right on a bus link. It's 15 minutes into the city, and during peak hour the buses go every 90 seconds. Every 90 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. So that is what's happening. That is where it is. I've got 2 or 3 opportunities that are literally within 1 kilometre of the city, walking distance to the city, walking distance to the train, walking distance to South Bank, which is where, you know, literally all the restaurants and nightlife and all that is. So, you know, it's very, very well located, and that's where the city's going. That's where the opportunities lie. So there's lots of opportunities, but I think in conclusion, just to clarify where I'm coming from, the most important thing is a hell of a lot of South Africans, and to be fair, anyone living out of Australia is nervous about the market. They're nervous about where the market is actually going. And interestingly enough, when you come here, when you read the research, the thing that really blows me away is the supply and demand. I've gone and looked at development after development after development. They finished, they completed, our clients are in there, they're happy, and they're 100% let. I mean, yes, ladies and gentlemen, 100% let. Literally, people move out in the morning, they clean the apartment during the day, and they move in the evening. That's the type of level of demand. The vacancy here in Brisbane is 1.5%. Now, 1% can't get lower than 1% because that's people moving in and out. So it's literally, the whole city is virtually fully occupied. So yes, it is a concern what's happening in Europe. It is a concern what's happening in America. But there's very, very different fundamentals from what's happening here in this market. And the other one that's huge, the difference between Australia and America, is recourse lending. You know, here you've got recourse, just like you got in South Africa. If you don't pay your mortgage, the banks can come after you. They can take your bicycle, your girlfriend, you know, and your car. Whereas in America, they've got non-recourse lending. People can just walk away from their properties, and it's another one of the reasons, along with supply and demand, that caused absolute chaos. So I don't think the market's going to grow, you know, gangbusters. There was a report yesterday in The Australian, which is the top financial newspaper here, that Brisbane is expected to grow by 16% over the next 3 years, Sydney by 23%. They're the top 2 areas that they are looking at with regards to supply and demand and the fundamentals. But certainly it's given me a lot of comfort with regards to my investments. It's given me a lot of comfort with regards to my investments. And I think really the closing thing that I would say is, if you took a 50-year view on all the countries around the world, you've got to say that Australia has to be in the top 3 countries in the world over the next 50 years. It's got the resources, it's got a very stable government that acts very quickly, as we saw during the global financial crisis. It's got a strong economy that hasn't got itself into debt like the US, Europe and the UK has. And I think really, most importantly, it's got a skilled labour force, only 20 million people, growing to 36 million people, but those are all quality people. They're people that have got skills, they're people that have got money. This country is on the up, and really it ticks all the boxes in terms of what you're looking for with regards to an efficient economy. And, you know, from an investment point of view, that for me is one of the most important things. And also, I think something that's very important is that the rule of law works perfectly here. The investor is protected at every level. So for me, you know, I'm happy to let my money migrate over here because it's safe, it's secure, there's good returns, there's good fundamentals, there's good growth prospects. And even if we were to see a double dip or another global financial crisis, well, Australia was the best performing economy in the G20 through the last one. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. So I believe it's one of the safest bets, some of the safest plays that I can make with regards to my capital, my returns. And at the end of the day, it gives me those 3 things which I don't get in South Africa, which is wealth preservation, a plan B, and peace of mind. Thank you very much. Hopefully that gives you some insight. If you want more information, go to our website, ipsinvest.com. Till next time, cheers.